All right, welcome back to another video in the Complete Web Dev series. We are still working on the object-oriented programming content management system, and this is our 10th video. And you might be saying to yourself, wow, we really haven't gotten very far for being 10 videos in. And what I'd like to encourage you is that the purpose of this chapter is to not quickly build a content management system. The purpose of this chapter is to really dive deep and understand object-oriented programming as we build this. And we're actually building a pretty cool framework that you can use with any projects that you want moving forward. I give you all the permission you want to take this code and use it as your own. Just don't sell it or copy my series. I've had that happen before, believe it or not. All right, and also I want to apologize about my AC running. I know that's a little loud. Hopefully someday I'm going to have a new office built where it won't have a window AC unit. I have a very, very small office here and it sounds kind of bad, but I'm doing the best I can with what I have, and I'm hoping this is a blessing to you, even with the imperfect performance and the imperfect sound and video. So let me get a drink here real quick and we will continue on. Okay, so what I'd like to do here is jump over to my screen. All right, so let's go ahead now and let's make sure, just make sure your XAMPP is up and running. Mine is already up and running, and I'm going to create a new branch for me to work on. And this is our 10th video, so I'm going to do a, git checkout -b v10. So at the end of this video, there's going to be a branch on GitHub, the GitHub repo, and you can look at v10. If you have any problems with your code, you can make sure that it matches mine. All right, so there we go. We've switched over to that, and I'm going to go ahead and do a git push -u, which will give me an error, and I do that all the time just because I can never remember this little line of code, and it gives it to us exactly. So I can actually either copy and paste this if I want, and I can paste that right here, and that will be the exact bit of code that I need here, and that sets up version 10 as a new branch on my remote in GitHub. Okay, so now let's go ahead and figure out what we're going to work on in this. And what I'd like to do is start to build out our view system a little bit. And so when we go to these these controller actions, we're going to want to load some HTML on the screen here. And so instead of going to our blog controller and putting HTML right here and echoing that out, we're going to build a really slick way to do this. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to add views here in this folder, and we're going to add layouts. So we're going to have multiple layouts that we can use within our application, and that layout will take our content and spit it out on the screen. And so let's go ahead now and start on that just a little bit. I'm going to look at my we might as well, I guess, start with the blog page here since we've already started that. So I'm going to go ahead and get rid of this foo action. We're not going to need that. Go ahead and get rid of that for now. And you can go ahead and get rid of these parameters on the index action. We're not going to need that. And go ahead and get rid of the die method here. And for now, let's just go ahead and leave this as an empty action here. So it's not really going to do anything just yet. But instead, what we want to do eventually at the very end of this video is we want to have this view render. We want to have that render our HTML to the screen. And so that's going to break right now. For one, there's no method on this view, because if you look at our controller file, the view is just null. So there's nothing there. So we're going to go ahead and try to complete some of that in this video. And again, we're going to go slow in that because I don't want to leave anyone behind. But in order to do this, this view is actually going to be an object of its own. So we're going to create, and I'm going to go ahead and shut my AC off because it's a little chilly now, and that'll save us a little bit of noise as well. So we have this view parameter that we set up, and we haven't done anything with it yet. What I'd like to do is go ahead and create a new file inside of our core, and this new file is going to be called view, and that'll be uppercase.php. And when that opens up, we're going to go ahead and open some PHP tags. We're not going to close them. And then we're going to, up here at the top, we're going to do a namespace, which has to be the first thing that you do in the file, by the way. And we're going to namespace this as core so that it matches the namespaces of the rest of our application here. So we're putting all of our framework or core functionality for our website here in this core, and this is what you can actually share with your other applications to build them. So now we have this core, and inside of here what we're going to do is go ahead and create the class by just giving it the class keyword, and we're going to say view, and that's capital there, and we're going to open and close some curly braces there. All right, the one thing that we need to do is we are going to set up some private properties here, and the private properties are going to start with underscores, but just for naming convention's sake, that's not necessary. But we're going to set site title equal to a blank string here, and then we're going to give an underscore content, and this underscore content is going to be equal to an array, and then we're going to set up a private one called current content, and this will be null by default, and then we will have a buffer, and I'll explain what we're going to do with all these here in a little bit. And then we're also going to have a layout. So we have these private properties that we're going to set up here in our view class, and then we're going to go ahead and set up a constructor. So that we're going to say public function, and we're going to use the magic method, so it's 2 underscores there, construct, and what this is going to take in is it's going to take in a path, and this path is going to be the path to our layout that we're going to set up. And so what we can do is sorry, I'm just looking at my reference material here. I may have an error that I just saw, and it's going to bother me. And let's go ahead and add another private property here, and we could have put it in line with the others, but that's getting kind of long. And this is going to be our default view path, and we'll set that equal to an just null out of the gate here. The next thing that we're going to do here is we'll add our curly braces to this construct method, and we're going to set this default view path with the this keyword. So this is going to be in reference or in scope to this view class. So it's going to look for a property on this class, and that's what this does. So we're going to say this underscore default view path is equal to path, just like that. Now we're going to give this constructor, we don't necessarily have to have this, so we're going to just give it an empty string by default. So this will be an empty string by default if we don't pass anything in here when we construct it. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a this site title, and we're going to set that equal to config get, and we're going to get the default site title from our config file. So let's go ahead and look in our config file and make sure we have a default site title, which we do right here. I called mine free skills. You can call yours whatever you'd like there, but mine is going to be free skills there. So it's going to get whatever's in the config file there and set it to the site title by default. So by default, if we don't set this, then our website will actually load in that. All right, the next thing that we're going to want to do here, and this is a little confusing to figure out what to show you in what order, but this is going to fail right here, this config get, because we actually haven't told it where that namespace is. So we're going to use the use keyword here, and we're going to say use core \config, just like that. Now we know the namespace of our config class because of this use, and now it's going to auto load that in and set this. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to use this constructor. So how are we going to construct this view? Well, actually what we're going to end up doing is every time that the controller class is constructed, we're going to set this view to a constructed view class. So inside here, what we can do is let's just go ahead and say view path is equal to string to lower and then we're going to take that controller that we passed in, and then we're going to concatenate on a forward slash, just a string of a forward slash, and we're going to concatenate on the action. So this is by default, this is going to be our default view path. So what this is actually going to do here, and is it's going to take, for example, if we're loading the blog index, then it's going to look for, it's going to look for inside the views thing here, it's going to look for a directory called blog, and it's going to look for a view called index. Okay, so that's how by default it's going to do that. Okay, so we have the view path there, and then what we're going to do is we're going to actually set to the view property here in the controller. We're going to say this view is equal to new, and we're going to instantiate a view object, and we're going to pass that view path into that. So we created this view object here that has this path, and so this is going to construct, and we're going to construct that right here in our controller. So every time, like in our router, every time we do this, it's also going to construct a view and set it to the property within the controller. So then we have access to this view inside of all of our controllers, which is an instantiated view object. Okay, then what we're going to do is we want to set the layout of the view. So we're going to run a this view, so that gives us the scope of this, so it's that instantiated view object, and then we're going to create a method called set layout, and the set layout is going to be by default the config get default layout. So let's go and just take a look at that and make sure we've set that up. So in our config, we should have a default layout, which we do, and we're going to call that layout default. And we haven't done this yet, so don't get too worked up about that. I'm just going to check my recording here and see how long we've been going. All right, about 12 minutes. So, all right, so this set layout, we got little squigglies here because it says that it's undefined. And so the reason that it's undefined is we haven't created it yet. So let's go ahead and, first of all, we need also to set our namespaces for the view and config. And the way that we can do that here is up at the top, we're going to say use, and these both come from core, so we can use a grouping here, and we'll say core view, comma, config. So that will use the namespace grouping here, and now we have view and config namespace so that they will auto load in correctly. They will auto load correctly. So I'm going to save that now, and let's go ahead and create this set layout. Now, set layout's not that big of a deal. It's a super easy method, because if we go back and look at our view here, you'll notice that the layout right here, this layout is actually private, so we're not going to have access to that. So we need to have a setter in here. So let's create a public function here, and we're going to call this set layout. And that set layout is going to go ahead and take the layout as a parameter, and it's simply going to say this, and we're going to access that layout property here is equal to layout. Now what this is going to do here is, because this is private, we don't want anything outside of this class setting it, so we put this setter in here, and this is set to public. So now our controller, we have access to the set layout, and it's going to set that by default when this is first instantiated to whatever we put in here. So it's going to be just set to default. Okay, so I hope that isn't too confusing, but that's what's going on there. Okay, the next thing that I want to be able to do is, let's go ahead and let's see, we have a lot to do here. So, you know, in our controller, in our blog controller, we were running this view render. Now, render has some red squigglies, and that's because we don't have that method created yet either. So we have to put that in this view method. So what we can do is go ahead and create a public function here, and that's actually a method, but they just use the function keyword, and it's going to be view. Oh, I'm sorry, not view. This is going to be render. Okay, and then what we're going to do is pass in a path. So we're going to allow a path to be passed in here, and by default, we're just going to set that to an empty string. So if if we don't call anything, like in our blog controller here, we're not calling anything, then we're going to use the default view path. Otherwise, we can override that if we want for some reason. That will give us some power and control later in our controllers. If we want to use a different view to render, we can do so. So that's what we're going to do here. So the first thing we want to do is an if statement to see if this path actually exists here. And so what we're going to say is we're going to do an if statement. We're going to say, hey, if empty path. So if it's an empty string, will evaluate to true with empty. So if it's empty, we're just going to say path is equal to this underscore default view path. Okay. Now we have this set, and if it is set, then we're just going to use whatever that is. And then what we're going to want to do is find that. So let's go ahead and show you what I mean. Let's create this view here, and we're going to create a new folder inside that view, and this is going to be called blog, and we want this to match whatever our controller is. And inside that blog, I'm going to add another one called index. And actually, I'm sorry, this is actually going to be a new file, and we're going to call that index.php, and this will be our actual markup will be right here. So let's go ahead and say, let's go in H1 here, and we're going to say welcome to our blog. Okay, so this right here is what we actually want to print to the screen when this render function runs. And so we're going to go ahead and set up that path. Now let's create a layout path variable here, and we're just going to say, hey, this is going to be proot. We'll do a directory separator, and then we're going to look in our well, you know what, we haven't created the layout yet. Let's well, that's fine. We'll do views / oh, it's not / we want to use our directory separator here, and then we're going to do we're going to look for layouts. So there's going to be a directory called layouts there, and then we're going to concatenate on our directory separator, and then we're going to concatenate on this underscore layout, and then we're going to concatenate on the .php. So this layout hasn't been created yet, so let's go ahead and create that. So in this views directory, let's create a new folder, and we're going to call these layouts. And inside this layouts, let's create a new file here, and we're going to call this default.php. So this default.php, we'll close that for now, because I'll show you what that does in a second. And actually, you know what we'll do is open that up, that default layout, just for the time being, and let's just go ahead and do a PHP echo, and we're going to say we're just going to echo out default layout. Okay, like that. That's all we're going to do here for now, and I'm going to close that, and we're going to come back to that later. And I'm also going to close this index view here. So this is the blog index, and then now we're going to continue to set those up. The other thing we want is our full path, and our full path is going to be proot. We're concatenate on the directory separator, and then we're going to look in our views directory, concatenate on our directory separator, and then we're going to concatenate on path, and then .php. So in this case, it would be index.php. So let's go now and let's just var dump both of these. Let's try out our layout path first. And if I go here and I'm going to close this, and we'll go here and let's go to the blog, and we're going to look in the index here. So now we have this path, and this is our full path. This is opt-lamp htdocs cms /views /layouts /default.php. So we have that full path for our layout. Now let's check and see what our full path, and I called this full path, but this is really the full path to our view, and this right here should be opt-lamp htdocs cms views blog index.php. So that's what it's going to be looking for here. So we have blog index.php, and then we have our layouts and default PHP. All right, now that we have both of those paths, we're going to check if they exist, and we can do that with an if statement. And we're just going to say, hey, if, you know what, I'm going to use a guard statement here. I'm going to say if not file exists, and we're going to check the full path here. And if that doesn't exist, we're actually going to throw a new PHP exception. And this exception is going to say the view, and then we'll just go ahead and put some quotes here, does not exist. So this is going to give us some good error handling to let us know that the view doesn't exist. And we need to know what that's called. So we're just going to say this. Oh, and we need to put in our curly brackets here. And we're going to say this layout, just like that. And so that'll throw that exception. And we'll also do the same thing for, oops, I'm sorry, not layout. This was supposed to be, I got this mixed up. This is actually supposed to be path. So that view doesn't exist. We'll also do one more of those, and we're going to say if not file exists. This is a built-in PHP, and this lets us know if the file exists on our server. And this time we're going to look at that layout path. And if that file doesn't exist, we're also going to throw a new PHP exception, and we'll give that a message as well. And this message is going to say the layout, and we can use this underscore layout does not exist. All right. We can also put our little quotes here if we like those. So we can do backslash, which the backslash is escapes this quote, so it doesn't actually get used as a quote in PHP. So this will stop this from going any further if the file or the layout doesn't exist. The next thing that we want to do is we actually just want to include these. So we're going to include our layout first. So include layout path. The next thing that we're going to do is include, you know what, we actually want to include the full path first. So we'll do include full path. And this is going to, just like we did in our first procedural PHP, this just takes whatever the contents of those pages are and includes them right here. So that's all this render function is going to do, is it's going to find the layout and the view and include those. So let's go ahead now and refresh in our browser, and I have a fatal exception that says this view blog index does not exist. So we have a problem there. So full path, it's looking for, oh, I know why, because views is inside of app. Yep, so I need to add right here on both of these, we're going to need to add app, and then we'll concatenate on a directory separator here, because the views directory is inside the app directory. So that was my bad. So now it should look in the app directory first and then the views. So let's go ahead and save that and refresh and see what we get. And now we see welcome to our blog and default layout. So if you've gotten to this point, that's pretty awesome. That means your render function's working. And so if the render function's working, now we can start building out the rest of our view to actually do some really, really cool stuff. Right now, this is really dumb. And I know a lot of you are thinking like, this is such a stupid, hard, complex, convoluted way to build a website, because I just watched you build a procedural PHP website that was much easier and a lot less code, and you would be right. That this is the con of doing this in this structure with MVC, but there are many pros to this, and this is a professional way to do it. So that's why I'm showing it to you, because you're going to come across this kind of ideology when you go into the real world and start working. And so it's important for you to learn this. And so let's just recap very quickly what we accomplished in this video, which was kind of a lot. I would have liked to gotten just a little bit further. In the next video, we're actually going to populate our default layout and our default blog index. And you'll see how powerful this is actually going to be, because now that we've actually got our render function working, again, keep in mind, we're building out a framework at the same time as building our website. But if you just had to build the website because you already built this, it's going to save you a ton of time. So this is the whole concept of slowing down to speed up long term, which is we're going to slow down and write systems that we can easily modify, but we really want to be able to just use this, everything in this core, in other projects, and then we can simply and effectively create a website very, very quickly by adding controllers, views, and models, and we'll have all this other hard stuff already done. And that's the beauty of object-oriented programming. The con of it is a little bit more upfront programming to do the same things as like procedural PHP. And so a lot of people who rag on object-oriented programming, they'll be like, look at the example here. This takes 100 lines of code to write, but I could do this in 10 lines of code with regular procedural PHP or functional PHP. And then people see that and they're like, oh yeah, object-oriented programming sucks. What they don't show you is what a huge project looks like 2 years down the line after you've been building up a website or a huge software as a service application. They don't show you how many lines of code the functional stuff is then, and how this is actually a lot less code and it's a lot more maintainable, and a lot easier to fix bugs and a lot easier to add functionality later on. So it does speed up the process over time. But initially, yes, it is going to take a little bit more time to do this. But I hope you've learned a little something. We created this public method here called render. And then the other thing that we've done is inside of our constructor on our controller class is we are actually constructing a view object and setting it to the view parameter here in this, this view property. I keep saying parameter, a view property on this controller object. And then we're once that's instantiated, we're setting the layout to the basic whatever set in our config file for the default layout. And we're gonna have two different layouts in this project. We're gonna have a layout for our main layout when people visit our website. And we're also gonna have a separate layout for our admin area. So that will get really, really cool. All right, guys, well, I hope that makes sense. Let's go ahead and commit this to GitHub. So I'm going to go back here and we will do a git status here. And you can see the unstaged files that I have. So I'm going to stage those by doing git add period, which will stage everything. And then I'll commit that and give it a commit message with the -m flag. And we will say the beginnings of the view and layout. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a git push, and then I'm going to check out my main branch here, and I'm going to merge in the v10 branch, and then we're going to go ahead and push that. So that's it for this video, guys. I will see you in the next video. Please comment, like, subscribe. Let me know if you're enjoying this, guys. Let me know if you're confused. But again, we're going to go through the code multiple times as we build this. So we're going to build it up just a little bits at a time. In the next video, hopefully we will have a full HTML page that's being rendered dynamically based upon our views and our layouts. So I hope that makes sense, and I will see you guys in the next video. If you'd like some sweet merch, head on over to freeskills.life. Love you guys. Great.